John sat silently, his mind replaying the moment Sophia had begged him to stay. The words had spilled from her lips with an urgency he hadn't expected, yet what struck him most was the absence of tears. No glistening drops traced down her cheeks, no quivering lips betrayed emotion. Instead, she looked at him with a hollow gaze, distant and unreadable, as if the plea was nothing more than a hollow performance. That cold detachment cut deeper than any harsh word could have. It left John grappling with confusion, a bitter sting settling in his chest that grew heavier with every passing second. He remembered the night vividly. The air between them was thick with tension, the silence almost unbearable. Sophia's voice broke through that stillness, begging him to stay, pleading for some thread of connection to hold on to. But her eyes betrayed nothing. No sorrow, no desperation, only a distant, chilling calmness that unsettled him more than anger or sadness ever could. John found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about their relationship. Was it real? Had she ever truly cared? Or was he just an actor in a cruel play he had never agreed to star in? That night marked the beginning of a painful unraveling. For years, John had believed in the warmth and affection they shared, clinging to the memories of laughter and whispered promises. Yet now, faced with Sophia's coldness, those memories felt like fragile glass shards beneath his feet, ready to cut him with the slightest misstep. He felt trapped in a maze of doubt and pain, desperate to find the truth hidden behind her silence. John's mind drifted back further, to the times when Sophia's touch had been gentle and her smile sincere. She had been the center of his world, the one person he trusted above all. They had shared dreams and secrets, built a sanctuary where love seemed unbreakable. But somewhere along the way, the walls of that sanctuary had crumbled, replaced by distance and shadows. Now, the woman he once adored was a stranger, her heart guarded by an invisible fortress he couldn't breach. The confusion gnawed at him relentlessly. How could someone who once held his hand with such tenderness now push him away with such indifference? He replayed their conversations, searching for signs, for moments he might have missed, the subtle shifts in tone, the unspoken words, the growing silence between them. But nothing explained the emptiness that had settled between them like a cold fog. It was as if Sophia had become a ghost, haunting the edges of his life but unreachable. John's heart ached with the weight of unanswered questions. Why had she begged him to stay if she was already gone? Was it guilt? Fear? Or something darker he dared not imagine? He struggled to understand the contradiction, to reconcile the warmth he once knew with the chill he now felt. The silence in her eyes spoke volumes, but the meaning was elusive, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. As the days passed, John found himself haunted not just by Sophia's absence, but by the facade she had maintained. Her cold detachment wasn't just a shield, it was a barrier that kept him out, cutting off any chance of closure or reconciliation. The pain of that realization was suffocating. He longed to break through the facade, to reach the person beneath the icy exterior, but each attempt seemed to push her further away. Despite the heartbreak, John's resolve grew stronger. He couldn't accept the silence as the final answer. Beneath Sophia's coldness, he sensed a story untold, a reason for her withdrawal that went beyond mere indifference. Something hidden, painful, and profound that she couldn't or wouldn't share. That belief gave him a fragile hope, a reason to keep searching for the truth even when the path seemed dark and uncertain. John's journey had begun, not just to understand Sophia's silence, but to understand himself. To confront the pain and confusion, and to find a way forward, whether that meant healing together or letting go. The first step was acceptance, accepting that the woman who begged him to stay was no longer the same, and that he needed to uncover the reasons behind the tears that never came. The memory of that cold night lingered like a shadow, a reminder of love's complexities and the fragility of trust. It was a wound that refused to heal, but also a catalyst for change. John knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and heartbreak, but he was determined to face it. Because some truths, no matter how painful, demanded to be uncovered, and some loves, no matter how broken, deserved the chance to be understood. John had always been a man of depth and loyalty, his heart woven tightly with the threads of commitment and sincerity. From the moment he met Sophia, he felt an unspoken connection, a magnetic pull that drew him into a world where emotions ran deep and promises held weight. His nature was one of emotional investment. When he cared, he did so wholly, leaving no room for half measures or doubts. Vulnerability was not a weakness to John but a gateway to genuine intimacy, something he valued above all else. Throughout their years together, John had been a steadfast presence in Sophia's life, the steady anchor in a sea of uncertainty. He remembered the early days vividly, how their conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with dreams, laughter, and shared hopes for the future. He was the kind of partner who listened with his entire being, who noticed the smallest shifts in mood and sought to comfort without hesitation. To John, love meant openness and trust, and he gave both freely to Sophia. Sophia, however, was a different story. From the outside, she appeared distant, a woman who carefully controlled the narrative of her emotions. Her indifference was a finely tuned mask, one that concealed layers of pain and insecurity John could barely glimpse. Beneath that cool exterior lay complexities that made her enigmatic, leaving John often puzzled by the contradictions in her behavior. She was at times warm and affectionate, yet just as often retreating into silence, creating walls that he struggled to breach. Their history was a tapestry woven with moments of profound closeness and growing emotional distance. In the beginning, their intimacy was effortless, touches lingered longer, smiles were more genuine, and the space between them seemed to disappear. They shared quiet mornings and restless nights, secrets whispered in the dark, and a sense that they were building something unbreakable. John cherished those times, clinging to the belief that their bond could weather any storm. But as time passed, the threads began to fray. Sophia's growing detachment became more apparent, manifesting as subtle coldness and an increasing reluctance to share her true feelings. John noticed how she would avoid his gaze during conversations, how laughter sometimes felt forced, and how her responses became clipped. He tried to confront these changes gently, offering reassurance and space, but the emotional disconnect only deepened. The warmth they once shared was replaced by a distance that seemed insurmountable. John's vulnerability in the face of this growing divide made him both resilient and fragile. He wanted desperately to understand what was happening, to mend the cracks before they widened into chasms. Yet with each failed attempt, his hope waned, replaced by a quiet ache that he kept hidden beneath a composed exterior. He found himself questioning not only Sophia's feelings but his own worth, wondering if his love was enough or if he was fighting a losing battle. Sophia's manipulative tendencies, though subtle, began to surface more frequently. She wielded her indifference like a weapon, using silence and avoidance to control the narrative and keep John off balance. At times, she would offer glimpses of the person he loved, soft smiles, fleeting touches, but they were often followed by sharp withdrawals that left him reeling. Her pain, carefully guarded and unspoken, seemed to drive these oscillations between closeness and distance, leaving John caught in a painful cycle of hope and despair. Despite the challenges, John's loyalty never faltered. He held on to the belief that beneath Sophia's defenses was the woman he had fallen for, someone capable of love and healing. He refused to give up on their story, even as it teetered on the edge of collapse. This unwavering devotion was both his strength and his vulnerability, fueling his determination to find clarity and closure. The emotional landscape between them was complex and fraught with unspoken tensions. John sensed that Sophia's indifference was not born of apathy but of a deeper struggle, a battle with fears, regrets, or wounds she was unwilling or unable to share. This realization complicated his feelings, blending frustration with compassion and confusion with longing. He found himself walking a tightrope between confronting the painful truths and preserving the fragile hope that still lingered. Their relationship, once a sanctuary, had become a battlefield where silence was as damaging as words and distance as painful as rejection. John's journey was now not only about saving what was left of their love but also about understanding the forces that had driven them apart. He knew that to move forward, whether together or apart, they needed to face these hidden truths and the emotional barriers they had both constructed. In this tangled web of past intimacy and present disconnection, John stood at a crossroads. His heart, battered but unbroken, sought answers and healing. Sophia remained a mystery wrapped in layers of pain and defense, her true feelings locked behind a mask that only time and courage might unravel. As John prepared to confront the uncertain future, he carried with him the weight of memories, the sting of lost warmth, and the faint but persistent hope that love might still find a way through the silence. John found himself caught in a relentless storm of confusion as Sophia's behavior became a series of mixed signals that defied logic and tore at his heart. One moment, she would speak softly, her voice laced with the familiarity of their shared past; the next, she would retreat into a cold, impenetrable silence that left him grasping at shadows. Each attempt to reach out felt like navigating a labyrinth with no exit, where every path led to more questions than answers. He remembered the mornings when Sophia's warmth had been a comforting certainty, now replaced by distant glances and half-answered texts. The laughter they once shared had turned into strained conversations, punctuated by silences heavy with unspoken resentment. John's efforts to bridge the widening gap were met with subtle rebuffs, averted eyes, curt replies, an absence of the tenderness he craved. It was as if Sophia had become a stranger wearing the face of someone he once loved. Desperation grew within John. He tried everything he could think of to reconnect: heartfelt messages, surprise visits, attempts to revive shared routines. But Sophia's coldness only deepened, a fortress that repelled his advances. Each rejection carved a deeper wound, isolating him further. He wondered if his love was perceived as suffocating or if he had simply become invisible to the woman who once cherished him. The cracks in their relationship began to reveal secrets John had never anticipated. Whispers of misunderstanding surfaced, misinterpreted words, concealed feelings, past grievances left unresolved. John learned that Sophia had been wrestling with her own demons, battling fears and doubts she never voiced. Her withdrawal was not just emotional but also protective, a defense against vulnerabilities she feared exposing. One evening, John overheard fragments of conversations between Sophia and a close friend that hinted at struggles he had been blind to. There were mentions of loneliness, regret, and choices that haunted her. The realization struck him hard: their breakup was not a simple failure of love but a complex tapestry woven with pain, mistrust, and unresolved conflicts. This new understanding both pained and perplexed him, as he grappled with feelings of guilt and helplessness. Sophia's behavior became increasingly unpredictable. There were moments when her eyes softened, and fleeting smiles broke through the facade, only to vanish without explanation. John yearned for these glimpses of the woman he loved, but they were fleeting and rare. More often, she maintained a cool distance, refusing to engage beyond superficial exchanges. This emotional withdrawal felt like a silent condemnation, a barrier that kept John out of her world. Isolation became John's constant companion. Friends who once offered solace now saw him retreating into himself, consumed by a quest for answers that seemed forever out of reach. The weight of uncertainty pressed down, making even the simplest interactions feel like battles. He questioned everything: his actions, his worth, the very foundation of their relationship. The love that had once been a source of strength now threatened to unravel his sense of self. In this vacuum of understanding, rumors and speculation began to fill the void. John heard whispers of past mistakes and betrayals, some true and others exaggerated. These stories clouded his judgment, fueling anger and sorrow. He found himself trapped between defending the memory of their love and confronting the harsh realities that had driven them apart. The struggle was exhausting, eroding his resolve and shaking his faith. Sophia's coldness was not without purpose. John sensed it was a shield, a way to protect herself from further hurt or perhaps from confronting painful truths. But for John, it was a barrier to healing, a silence that screamed louder than any accusation. He longed for a conversation that could break through the ice, a moment of honesty that could illuminate the path forward. Without it, he felt lost in darkness. As days turned into weeks, John's attempts to understand the breakup only deepened the mystery. He discovered fragments of Sophia's past that she had kept hidden, struggles with family, fears of abandonment, and a longing for something he couldn't provide. These revelations complicated his emotions, blending compassion with frustration. He realized that their story was entwined with personal battles that neither had fully acknowledged. The tension reached a breaking point when John confronted Sophia directly. His voice trembled with emotion as he demanded clarity, desperate to know why the woman he loved had turned so cold. Sophia's response was guarded, her words measured and distant. She spoke of needing space, of feeling overwhelmed, and of fears she couldn't voice. The honesty was painful but incomplete, leaving John aching for more. In the aftermath of their confrontation, John was left to grapple with uncertainty. The gulf between them seemed wider than ever, filled with questions that begged for answers. He wrestled with the desire to hold on and the fear of losing himself in the process. The path ahead was unclear, shadowed by the complexities of their fractured bond. Yet amid the confusion and pain, a fragile thread of hope persisted. John believed that beneath Sophia's coldness lay a heart still capable of love and healing. He resolved to keep searching for the truth, to confront the shadows that threatened to consume them both. The journey would be arduous, marked by moments of despair and revelation, but he was determined to face it, no matter the cost. The mixed signals, the emotional withdrawal, and the unspoken secrets had thrown their lives into chaos. John knew that to find peace, they needed to unravel the tangled web of misunderstandings and confront the hidden wounds. Only then could they hope to either rebuild what was lost or find the strength to let go with grace. John's world was engulfed by an overwhelming tide of emotions that churned relentlessly within him: rejection, betrayal, and a love that refused to fade despite the fractures between him and Sophia. Each day felt like a battle, a struggle to reconcile the pain of loss with the stubborn hope that somewhere beneath the cold distance, the woman he once loved still existed. His mind was a relentless loop of memories, moments of joy now tainted by the shadows of doubt and silence. He found himself replaying their past endlessly, searching for signs he might have missed, moments where the foundation had begun to crack. He recalled their laughter in sunlit parks, the warmth of her hand in his, and whispered dreams of a future built together. Those memories, once a source of comfort, now felt like ghosts haunting his waking hours, reminders of what had been and what might never be again. The happiness that had once filled their days was now smeared with the bitterness of unanswered questions. John questioned his own worth with a piercing intensity. Was he not enough for Sophia? Had his love been too much or too little? These doubts gnawed at his confidence, leaving him vulnerable and exposed. He wondered if he had been blind to her pain, unable to see the growing distance until it became insurmountable. The silence from Sophia was the cruelest wound of all. Her refusal to communicate deepened his despair, transforming hope into a fragile thread barely holding him together. Flashbacks intruded upon his thoughts unbidden. He saw Sophia smile as she leaned against him on cold winter nights, their shared dreams whispered in hushed tones. He remembered promises made under starlit skies, the certainty of a love that felt eternal. But those memories were now fractured, fragmented by moments of coldness and withdrawal he could not explain. The warmth they once shared had been replaced by a void, an emptiness that left him aching for the connection they had lost. The emotional turmoil was relentless. John's nights were restless, filled with the echo of Sophia's absence and the weight of what remained unsaid. He grappled with the paradox of loving someone who had pushed him away, struggling to accept a reality where love did not guarantee belonging. His heart was a battlefield where hope and despair clashed violently, each threatening to consume the other. John's interactions with friends became strained as he withdrew into himself, reluctant to share the depth of his pain. He feared their pity or misguided advice, choosing instead to face his struggles in solitude. The loneliness was profound, a silent companion that followed him through his days. Yet even in isolation, the presence of Sophia lingered, her image, her voice, the imprint of their shared past refusing to fade. He wrestled with forgiveness, whether for Sophia, for himself, or for the intangible forces that had torn them apart. The anger that sometimes flared was tempered by understanding, as he recognized the complexities beneath her silence and distance. This inner conflict left him torn, unable to fully release resentment or embrace compassion. John's hope was not blind, it was cautious and fragile. He clung to the possibility that healing was possible, that the wounds between them could mend with time and truth. Yet he was also aware that some breaks might be too deep to repair, that love sometimes meant letting go. This duality kept him suspended in uncertainty, yearning for clarity yet fearing the answers it might bring. The unresolved love that bound him to Sophia was a paradox, both a source of strength and a wellspring of pain. It fueled his desire to understand, to reconnect, and to find peace, but it also kept him tethered to a past that threatened to consume his present. The emotional struggle was exhausting, a marathon with no finish line in sight. In moments of quiet reflection, John acknowledged the complexity of their bond. Love was rarely simple or linear, it was messy, filled with contradictions and challenges. His journey was not just about winning back Sophia's heart but about discovering his own resilience and capacity to heal. This realization offered a glimmer of hope amid the darkness. Despite the pain, John's love remained a guiding light, illuminating the path forward even when the way was unclear. He knew that emotional struggles were part of the process, necessary steps toward growth and understanding. With each day, he gathered the strength to face the uncertainty, holding on to the belief that truth and healing awaited beyond the turmoil. The silence that once deepened his despair gradually became a space for introspection and self-discovery. John learned to navigate his feelings with greater clarity, distinguishing between the pain of loss and the promise of renewal. This evolving awareness was a testament to his enduring spirit and the complexity of love itself. John sat alone in the dim light of his apartment, the weight of confusion and heartbreak pressing down like a physical force. For weeks, he had wrestled with Sophia's chilling silence, her emotional withdrawal that cut deeper than any words ever could. But now, a hidden truth had begun to surface, one that threatened to turn everything he believed on its head. Sophia's coldness was not born of cruelty or indifference, it was a carefully constructed shield, a desperate defense against pain too deep for her to confront openly. It came to John through fragments, snippets of conversation overheard, hints dropped by mutual friends, and the subtle but undeniable signs he had missed while caught in his own turmoil. Sophia was carrying burdens he had never known about, wounds inflicted long before their love began. Trauma from her past, guilt over choices she couldn't undo, fears that shackled her heart, all these lay hidden beneath the surface of her distant demeanor. The realization shook John to his core. Anger and resentment, once so fierce and consuming, began to give way to a fragile empathy. He saw Sophia not as a cold, manipulative figure but as a wounded person struggling to survive her own darkness. This newfound understanding softened the edges of his pain, even as it deepened the complexity of their fractured relationship. John's mind raced with conflicting emotions. How could he reconcile the hurt she had caused with the compassion he now felt? The path forward was no longer a simple question of love or loss, it was tangled with the weight of her hidden struggles and his own need for healing. Empathy did not erase the wounds, but it changed the way he viewed them, opening a space for forgiveness and hope. Yet, this revelation brought its own confusion. If Sophia's coldness was a shield, what lay beyond it? Was she willing to lower her defenses, to let him in again? Or was this an insurmountable barrier, a wall that neither of them could breach? John found himself at a crossroads, unsure whether to push for reconciliation or to accept the limits of their connection. The shadows of trauma and guilt were not easily dispelled. John imagined the nights Sophia must have spent alone, battling memories and fears that no one else could see. Her silence was a language of pain, spoken in the absence of tears and the withholding of affection. This understanding made John's heart ache with both sorrow and tenderness. He thought about the moments they had shared when Sophia's mask briefly slipped, the rare smiles, the fleeting touches, the soft words spoken in vulnerability. Those glimpses of the real her were now treasures, fragile reminders that beneath the shield was someone who still longed for connection. John clung to those memories, hoping they signaled a possibility for healing. But the complexity of their situation weighed heavily. John knew that empathy alone would not be enough to mend what was broken. Healing required courage from both of them, courage to face the pain, to speak the truths that had been buried, and to confront the fears that had driven them apart. The question was whether Sophia was ready for that journey, and whether John could withstand the uncertainty it entailed. The shift in John's feelings also brought introspection. He examined his own pain and how it had shaped his reactions. His anger had been a shield too, a way to protect himself from vulnerability. Now, peeling back those layers, he saw how love and pain were intertwined, each shaping the other in ways he was only beginning to understand. John reached out cautiously, attempting to connect with Sophia on this new level of understanding. His messages were gentle, avoiding blame, expressing concern rather than accusation. Yet, the silence often remained, a painful reminder of the distance that still separated them. Sometimes, Sophia responded with guarded words, hinting at her struggles but retreating before the conversation could deepen. This push and pull created a fragile dance between them, filled with hope and hesitation. John learned patience, recognizing that healing was not linear and that progress could come in small, uncertain steps. He treasured every moment of connection, no matter how brief, as proof that the shield might one day be lowered. The revelation of Sophia's pain complicated John's vision of their future. The simple desire to rebuild what was lost was now entwined with the reality of navigating trauma and fear. He understood that their relationship could not return to what it once was. It would have to transform, adapting to the new truths they faced. John's confusion was not just about Sophia but about himself, how to balance empathy with self-care, how to love without losing himself, and how to find peace amidst uncertainty. He grappled with questions that had no easy answers, torn between the desire to hold on and the need to protect his own heart. Through this inner turmoil, John began to see the depth of human complexity, the ways in which love can be both healing and painful, protective and damaging. He realized that relationships were not just about shared happiness but about confronting the darkness together, or sometimes separately. As days turned into weeks, John's resolve grew. He was willing to walk this difficult path, to face the challenges of healing alongside Sophia if she was willing. But he also prepared himself for the possibility that some wounds might never fully close, and that love sometimes means knowing when to let go. The hidden truth about Sophia's coldness reshaped John's journey from one of anger and confusion to one of empathy and tentative hope. It was a painful but necessary evolution, opening a door to understanding that had been closed by silence and fear. In the quiet moments, John held on to this hope, fragile but real, that beneath the shield lay a heart still capable of love, waiting for the courage to break free. And in that hope, he found the strength to continue, uncertain of the destination but certain that the journey was worth taking. John sat across from Sophia in the dimly lit cafe where they had once shared countless moments of laughter and whispered dreams. The weight of everything unspoken between them hung heavily in the air. His heart pounded, a mixture of anxiety and resolve flooding through him as he finally gathered the courage to confront the silence that had long defined their fractured relationship. This was the moment he had feared and hoped for, the moment where truths would no longer hide behind walls of coldness. He looked into Sophia's guarded eyes, searching for any hint of the warmth he once knew. The mask she wore was cracked, but not yet shattered, and he knew that breaking through would require more than words. It would demand vulnerability from both of them. "I need to know the truth, Sophia," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Why did you push me away? Why the silence? I can't keep living in this space of confusion." Sophia's gaze flickered, her composure wavering for the first time in months. The wall she had built around herself trembled as she struggled to hold back tears that threatened to fall. "It's not that simple, John," she whispered, voice trembling. "I wanted to protect myself, from the pain, from the past, from everything I couldn't face." She took a shaky breath, the weight of her confession filling the small space between them. "I was scared that if I let you in completely, I would lose myself in the process." John's chest tightened, his own defenses melting away as empathy flooded through him. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it brushed against hers. "You didn't have to face it alone," he said softly. "I wanted to be there, for all of it, the pain and the hope. But your silence left me lost, wondering where I fit in your life anymore." The tension between them thickened, emotions swirling in a tempest of fear, regret, and longing. Sophia's eyes shone with unshed tears as she revealed the depth of her struggle, a past filled with trauma she had buried, guilt that gnawed at her soul, and a fear of being abandoned again. "I thought distancing myself would keep us both safe," she admitted, voice breaking. "But all it did was hurt us more." John swallowed hard, the rawness of her admission piercing through years of hurt and misunderstanding. "I'm not perfect," he confessed, "but I never stopped loving you. Even when it felt like you were slipping away, I held on because I believed in us. His voice cracked, revealing the vulnerability he had tried to hide. I need to know if there's still a place for me in your heart. Sophia's lips trembled as she struggled with the words that hovered on the edge of release. There is, she whispered, but I'm scared that my pain will push you away, scared that I'm not the person you thought I was. Her eyes locked with his, searching for reassurance, for the courage to bridge the chasm that had grown between them. The rawness of the moment shattered the last of their barriers. John pulled her into a tentative embrace, holding her close as if to transfer strength through their shared breath. We're broken, he murmured against her hair, but maybe that's okay. Maybe love isn't about perfection but about choosing to heal together, even when it's hard. Sophia clung to him, the floodgates opening as tears streamed down her cheeks. The walls of indifference she had painstakingly erected crumbled, replaced by the fragile hope of reconciliation. I want to try, she sobbed. I want to believe we can be more than this pain. Their hearts beat in unison, a fragile rhythm of healing and possibility. The confrontation had stripped away pretense, laying bare the truth of their love and their fears. In that moment, guarded hearts softened, and the path ahead, though uncertain, was illuminated by honesty and mutual yearning. As they pulled apart, John looked deeply into Sophia's eyes and whispered, "Whatever happens next, we face it together. No more silence, no more walls." She nodded, a tentative smile breaking through the tears, signaling a beginning rather than an end. This pivotal moment marked the turning point in their story, where lingering love confronted guarded hearts, and the choice to heal was made amidst the ruins of their past. It was a fragile victory, but one born from courage and the unyielding desire to reclaim what was nearly lost. ChatGPT said. John and Sophia sat across from each other once more, this time in the quiet intimacy of John's living room. The raw emotions that had flooded their last encounter had settled into a solemn stillness, a fragile peace born from honest confrontation. The tension between them remained, but it was now tempered by mutual understanding, a tentative truce forged from the scars of their shared past. Neither of them spoke at first. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. It was the calm after a storm, a pause to gather strength before facing the uncertain path ahead. John looked at Sophia, his eyes searching hers for the resolve they both needed. "We've been through so much," he began slowly, "and I know we're not the same people we were before. But I think it's time we decide what we really want." Sophia nodded, her gaze steady yet softened. "I've been afraid," she admitted quietly. "Afraid that if we tried again, we'd just repeat the same mistakes. But I also know that holding on to what we had, or what we hoped for, has been tearing me apart." John's heart ached at her words, recognizing the pain behind her vulnerability. "I've made mistakes too," he said earnestly. "Maybe I didn't always understand you or give you the space you needed. But I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself." The conversation unfolded with a cautious honesty that neither had dared before. They shared their regrets, acknowledged the ways they had hurt each other, and spoke openly about the emotional wounds that still lingered. There were tears and sighs, moments of silence, and occasional smiles that flickered like fragile flames in the dim light. John confessed the loneliness he had felt during their estrangement, the nights spent questioning his own worth and the future of their relationship. Sophia revealed the internal battle she had fought, the guilt, the fear, and the wall she had built to protect herself. In laying bare these truths, they found not blame but empathy, a recognition of their shared humanity. As the hours passed, they faced the hardest question, whether to try rebuilding their bond or to accept separation as the kindest resolution. Neither answer came easily. The history between them was a tapestry of love and pain, woven with threads too strong to ignore yet frayed beyond simple repair. Sophia's voice trembled as she spoke, "I don't know if I can trust again, not fully. But maybe we can start small, see if there's a way forward." Her eyes met John's, searching for reassurance. John reached out, taking her hand gently. "I'm willing to try, if you are. But if at any point we realize it's not enough, we have to be honest with ourselves. No pretending, no clinging to something that's not real." There was an unspoken agreement in the room, a promise to move forward with honesty and patience, to rebuild trust brick by brick if that was their fate. Yet, beneath this hope, a shadow of doubt lingered, a reminder that love's healing was never guaranteed. They also acknowledged the possibility that separation might be the healthiest choice. That sometimes, love means letting go, allowing both to find peace apart rather than suffering together. This acceptance was perhaps the most profound act of love they could offer each other, respecting their limits and honoring their individual journeys. In this uneasy understanding, John and Sophia found a fragile peace. It was not the triumphant ending of fairy tales, but a realistic beginning shaped by scars and truths. They knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, setbacks, and difficult choices, but they also knew they would face it with eyes wide open. The night ended with a quiet embrace, a gesture of solidarity and hope rather than possession. As they parted, there was no promise of forever, only the courage to face whatever came next with honesty and grace. John stood by the window after Sophia left, the city lights flickering like distant stars. He felt the weight of the night settle around him, a mixture of sorrow, relief, and cautious optimism. The story between them was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, he believed in the possibility of healing, whether together or apart. John sat alone in the fading light, the words echoing in his mind, "She begged me to stay, but when she pushed me away, not a single tear fell." That haunting line was the final chord of their story, a stark reminder of the cold finality that had marked the end of what once felt like forever. It encapsulated the silence between them, the absence of the emotions he had longed to see, the hollow space where love should have lived. The memory of Sophia's plea lingered, not as a sign of hope, but as a paradox. How could someone beg for love without showing the pain that such a plea demands? It was a riddle that troubled John endlessly, the contradiction of words spoken with a voice that lacked the weight of feeling. That void between them had been filled with distance, guarded hearts, and unspoken fears, leaving him to question what love truly meant when emotions were withheld. He thought back to their journey, the moments of warmth and connection, the fractures and silences, the raw confrontation that had forced truth into the open. Love, he realized, was not always the bright flame of fairy tales. Sometimes, it was a fragile ember, flickering in the dark, threatened by the cold winds of fear and pain. And sometimes, love meant facing the unbearable truth that not all emotions are shared, that some hearts remain closed even when the soul still yearns. John's heart ached with the weight of loss and the ghost of what could have been. Yet within that ache was a quiet strength, a recognition that love is complex, imperfect, and often painful. It was a lesson in acceptance, in understanding that holding on to someone who withholds their tears is a burden both heavy and lonely. The story closed not with resolution, but with a lingering question: how do we love when the language of the heart is silent? How do we find peace when the tears never fall? For John, that question would remain, a bittersweet echo that shaped his path forward. As the night deepened, John rose and looked out at the world beyond his window, a world where love was both fragile and fierce, where hearts broke and healed in cycles as old as time. He breathed deeply, embracing the uncertainty, ready to face whatever came next with the lessons learned and the courage to love again, even when emotions hid behind walls.